this is Cole Morrison with 143 TV, and we're in Coach A's office here alongside the man himself, Coach A. How are you doing today?
Very well, thank you.
It's good to hear. So we got a couple questions for you at the end of your very successful season. So the first would be, as summer came to an end and football was starting up, and someone were to come up to you and say you would be playing in the Super Bowl for the state championship, would you believe them?
To be honest with you, yeah. I mean, I put up on my calendar on the bulletin board right behind Matthew there. Every year we do it the day after the last game. I put up the next year's calendar. And with this whole new playoff format, we had looked at the teams that we could possibly be facing in the playoffs. And it wasn't the teams that we had played previously, Holliston, Westwood, teams that were 2-3 times our size. These were schools like Nantucket, like Blue Hills, schools that were our size with the same student population and the same type of student body, realizing we can definitely hold our own against those teams. And, you know, it wasn't, I want to say, a given, because a lot of things had to go well this year for us to get to the point where we got to. But the kids and the coaching staff had some pretty high expectations with the new format that allowed us to feel pretty confident going into the season.
It's always good to go in with high expectations, and usually gives pretty good results. And sticking with the beginning of the season, one huge portion of like a successful team is good team chemistry.
Yep.
How was your team's chemistry at the beginning of the season, and did it have an effect on how successful you were?
I think so. I mean, these guys were getting together over the summertime in the weight room, and they were playing in a passing league in Hingham every Wednesday in July. And you could tell on certain days when everybody was present, there was a little bit of electricity amongst the group. You know, Chris Haggerty and the other seniors that were participating in that passing league had been playing with each other for so long. They knew where, like Rocco and Chris, they knew where each other were going to be and what was expected of them. Liam Burke started working into that mix. And the next thing you know, as the summer was winding down, the kids were getting obviously much more excited. And that transferred from the previous year, because most of the team was back from last year. You know, we had lost Shane and Jake Hirth and Craig Davis and some other major seniors. But the heart of the team on the offensive side and the defensive side was back. We had, I think, 7 returners on defense and I think another 7 on offense. And so coming in, they knew each other, not just from football. Most of them played basketball or hockey together. Others played lacrosse and baseball in the springtime. So the chemistry was a massive, massive contributing factor to the success of the team this year.
It's always very important. So as the season started and you started playing games and you were demolishing teams, is the best way to put it, by double digits. And how did you go about, once the playoffs came around, preparing for teams that you hadn't seen as much and were definitely a lot stronger than the ones you'd faced in the regular season?
That was that's an excellent question. You know, we had the South Shore League is usually a very, very strong league from top to bottom. But again, this year was the first year of a new format, and the South Shore League had split up. And we continued to play Rockland and Norwell and Abington from the large side when most of the other South Shore League teams went and picked smaller schools. So beating up on those bigger schools from the South Shore Large was a great way to start the season. Granted, we did lose to Abington, but we played them very physically, and they obviously went on a heck of a run this year as well. And that was a great indicator of where do we stand. But when it came time for the playoffs, it didn't take a heck of a lot for the kids to really kind of understand the competition wasn't what we faced in the regular season. And what was at stake was greater than what we faced in the regular season, in that, you know, it was a win and go on, lose and go into the loser bracket type of a situation, a one and done, so to speak. And having that as motivation and having that kind of drive the practices and drive the training sessions in the weight room and you know, on the off days was, I think, a tremendous way to get these kids motivated. They were focused, they paid attention to the films, they paid attention to the various chalkboard talks that we had, and really, as you can attest by the results of the week-to-week season, they did a nice job meeting the challenges with the exception of one.
I mean, just looking at the how the season played off, you could definitely see all the hard work and effort they put in there. So last spring, during the state finals for the lacrosse championship, Tim Gillis tore his ACL, and that must have been devastating news for you. But you knew that you'd be out for the football season. So when it came around, you had to put in Cole Kissick and Ryan Gillis and Nick Hall, who all ran. Did you have any idea that they'd be so successful?
Again, really good question, and trust me, when we heard that Timmy got injured in the springtime, a lot of the coaches were like, "Oh boy, what are we going to do about our running game?" And we had no real plan A, but we had a series of Plan B, Plan C, and Plan D to try and make up for that. And real early on in the preseason, Cole started to emerge head and shoulders above everybody else with his speed, his shiftiness, his versatility out of the backfield. And he was able to take a lot of the burden off of, we were entertaining thoughts of using Rocco as a running back, but that would have weakened our receiving core. He wouldn't have been able to go on the defensive side of the ball most likely. So if we were to utilize Rocco, there's a lot of things that the coaches had to take into consideration, but having Cole step in and obviously very adequately and really quite wonderfully fill in for Timmy was massive. And you could see Timmy's presence felt on the sideline. He was always spurring and helping his brother Ryan on. He was always cheering for Cole. He had words of wisdoms during practice and on the sidelines during games. And I mean, my heart went out to the poor kid because I know he lives and breathes football and he loves the sport. And to sit there with his teammates, ones that he just played with, 12 months previously, and not be able to do it now, I know it tore him apart at times. But he handled it with class. And it's just very fortunate that he has his senior year to come back to. Mm-hmm. Probably the most unfortunate part about this was it was his last chance to play with his brother. And unfortunately that won't happen, but Timmy does get one more year of football under his belt at the high school level, and I'm sure he's going to come back with vengeance.
Speaking of the next year, you have Gillis coming back,
Mm-hmm.
you have Kissick coming back,
Mm-hmm.
you also have Hall, who was very successful as a sophomore, now a junior, who could definitely be successful in the league. What's your plan for the backfield?
Yeah, right. I have no idea. Get those guys the football as many times as possible, but before we can even get them the football, we've got to replace Will Lucas, a 2-year all-star center. We've got to replace Jack McElgan, a 2-year all-star offensive lineman. Mickey Barry, a 2-year all-star offensive lineman who was not only all-star, but he was a Ledger, Globe, Herald All-Scholastic this year, South Shore League Player of the Year. Kissick didn't gain all those yards by himself, and Timmy the year before didn't gain all those yards by himself. So we've got some big holes to fill on the offensive line, but we've got Jake Johnson coming back, Alex Norton coming back with a year of experience. We've got a number of different kids that got quality reps, Hayes Caniley, Matt Froyo, a number of kids that can step in to possibly fill holes. Jack Hoffman, who spent a lot of the year on the IR this year, is going to be back and ready to go. Jack Donahue back again as a tight end. So we just got to this is the challenge of coaching at Cohasset High School with so small numbers. It's finding the right pieces of the puzzle and fitting them in. But it's not for a lack of talent. The coach's task right now, myself and all of the assistant coaches respectively, we've got to put the right people in the right spot to guarantee the most success possible, not just for those individuals, but for the team. It is comforting to know we've got some experienced, battle-tested running backs behind them. So a good running back can make an average line look pretty good pretty quickly, and we've got 3 of those guys. So it won't take us long to get the line up to speed. We just got to find the guys that are willing to put in the work.
That's a very good point. So when the Super Bowl came around and you're out on the field, what was it like to be walking the sidelines that Bill Belichick roams every Sunday with the Patriots?
That was really, really cool. I think aside from being the first game, I think a lot of kids went in like, oh man, it's 9 o'clock start, blah, blah, blah. There was a little bit of negativity, not from our kids, but a lot of the people that we were talking to. Why is the game so early? But being there, getting there at about 7:45, the sun was just coming up over the edge of the stadium. The clouds were almost surreal. It just started to snow lightly, and I'm sitting there looking down at this giant Patriots logo, and I was like, this is unbelievable. This is awesome. And the kids are just running around playing catch, and what was really cool was that they got to get all the oohs and the ahs and the excitement about being in the stadium aside. They went through their pregame routine that they normally do in Gillette Stadium, which is, again, a huge memory. The echo that takes place, it kind of gets drowned out on Alumni Stadium just because we don't have the stands around it, but in that environment, it's just unbelievable sounding. And I have a feeling that's going to be one of the biggest memories for both the coaches and the players was the pregame time on that field. the game itself is a blur, it goes by very quickly, there's so much intensity going on, but when you could actually step back and breathe and look around and take it all in, I think that's really what the kids will be, probably one of the most vivid memories of that day.
Must have been an amazing experience.
It was really cool. It really was. What a top-notch facility.
So the question that's on everyone's mind is, how's the Skippers going to look next year?
Lots of potential. You know, I mean, this year you asked me the question at the beginning, Cole, about where would we be. Can I see us making another run to Gillette? I think it's in the cards, but it's not an automatic. It's not a given. You know, a lot of things had to happen this year. You know, for the most part, we stayed with the exception of Timmy, and we lost Jack, and unfortunately we lost Danny Tangerlini towards the end of the season. You know, we only had 3 injuries out of 67 to speak of. You know, if we stay healthy again, and if these kids take to the system, if we are able to execute, you know, those are all things that we couldn't necessarily count on going into the year. We knew what we had, but we had to also show up and play week to week and put the practice in Monday through Thursday. But I think this group of seniors in particular left that bar set pretty high, and I really hope, and I know the coaches do as well, and the players, that they're going to try their best to strive to not just get there, but, you know, bring one home.
Sounds like a good plan. Well, thanks for your time, Coach.
My pleasure.
For Afanasiw, I'm Cole Morrison. This is 143 TV, and thanks for watching.